sorted up, sorted up, so I can see myself. Hello. So this live Q&A is all about connecting with your audience. So in in honor of that, can you give me a hi if you are out there, or a like, or a heart, or any indication that you're out there, because it's always lovely to know that there are people out there listening right now. Or if you're listening on replay, hashtag replay, and feel free to ask any questions at any point. Now, some of you will have seen the video that I put out about nerves and connecting with your audience, and some of you may not. But in essence, when we are nervous, in my experience, we have an inclination to disconnect from our audience in order to keep ourselves safe. And this can take all sorts of different forms. And hi, Barry. I've just seen a like. It's really hard to see the likes as they come up these days, but I've just seen a like, so good to know there are people out there. So this disconnection from our audience can take a number of different forms. One of which can be, and this used to happen to me, almost like a fuzziness. I couldn't focus on my audience. And it was almost like I was subconsciously blurring them out. Hi, Barry. Another can be, and I hear this said, and I'm sure it's useful for some people, but I have an issue with the instructions to talk or sing above the audience's head if it is a technique to try and stop you being nervous, and something that isn't related to the communication, the art of what you're doing. Now, it obviously helps some people sometimes, but I think there are more powerful ways of helping you in that space of nerves when the inclination is to disconnect from your audience. And the most important of these is to actively connect with your audience. Now, that doesn't mean go out and say, hi, how are you? But it's psychologically to connect with them. So this could be looking from the wings just to see who's there. And then start to ask yourself some questions about the audience. Not about what they think of you, not self-reflective questions, but questions of, I wonder what they're here to see. I wonder what they want from this. I wonder what sort of days they've had. Because we can get into this mindset of seeing the audience as a judgmental mass who are there to condemn us or to praise us. It's either going to be wonderful or terrible. And we don't individualize them, which means we lose their humanity. We lose the fact that they are human beings like us. And it also gets in the way of us seeing things from their perspective. And we forget what we want to give the audience. And in the first section, first step, I talk about connecting with your material. And part of that connection is to think about what you want to give the audience, what you want the audience to take away from your performance. And when you start thinking about that, you start thinking about your audience. So another way into that is to think about what your audience wants to take away. What will mean they will go away going, that was a good evening, or that was a good experience. Because it's not what we want from the performance. It isn't the same. I always say that we fear judgment, and I'm never going to tell you judgment isn't going to come, because we are judgmental beings in our nature, humans. It keeps us safe in many ways. But people aren't going to judge you the way you judge you. They have different priorities, different things to get out of stuff. When they go to a concert, they want a nice evening, a pleasant evening. When they go to a talk, They perhaps want to be stimulated and find something really interesting and be able to pull some facts out and go home and be able to discuss things with their family. And you can give that to them. If you're a singer and you're producing this lovely performance, whether or not you make a couple of mistakes is generally neither here nor there for the audience. It's the overall performance they're there for, that feeling. When I ask people to talk about the best performance they've ever experienced, so singers talking about the best performance they've ever witnessed, they always talk about emotional connection. They always talk about believability. Very rarely, sometimes, but very rarely do they talk about technique, because for me, technique facilitates all of that, and bad technique can get in the way of that. But the priority is that communication, that emotional and intellectual communication of a message. And by looking at the audience and wondering what sort of days they've had and how perhaps you could make their day a brighter day, how perhaps you could give them something really juicy to go back and talk about if it's a speech, and if it's a song, how you want to move them, what you want them to get from the words and the music and the story and the emotion. And that pulls us out of thinking about them judging us. And it makes us think about them. And whilst we're thinking about them, it's so much harder to think about ourselves. And when it's harder to think about ourselves, we are less likely to judge ourselves and criticize ourselves, and we are less likely to be nervous. So if at any point you have any questions about what I'm talking about, or anything you want more clarification, or you want to challenge what I'm saying, feel free to put it in the box either now or when you come back. If you're watching this on replay, if you're watching this on replay, at that point, feel free to ask me any questions or make any comments. But the essence of this is to reconnect with your audience, because the temptation when we're nervous is to disconnect, because then we feel safer. But actually, by disconnecting from our audience, we're putting a barrier between us and them, which means they are less likely to take what we want from it. They're less likely to get what we want, and more importantly, what they want from the performance. Whereas when we actually engage with them, think about them, look at them, whether that's from the wings when they're arriving, or if you're able, in the middle of the performance, if it's appropriate, actually it has this calming effect if we are focusing on them. If we're looking at them and thinking, oh, are they having fun? And it's about you, then that makes us nervous. If it's more curiosity that's driving that, oh, what's going on there? Wonder what that mother and child are talking about. Wonder what that couple are talking about in the back there. And it brings that sense of authenticity to who they are. And it's far easier for us to be authentic and open to the idea that if we make a mistake, it's not a disaster, when we recognize that our audience are human. Our audience have these human feelings and human needs and wants that have absolutely nothing to do with us and how worthy we are or not. So we can be striving to be brilliant, but if we're not focusing on what they want, what they might want to get from this performance, and how we can serve their wants and needs for the evening, then we're actually doing them a disservice by being nervous and having that false thought that the nerves are going to make us pull our socks up and do a good job. We actually do our audience a disservice. Now, I'm not saying the adrenaline that comes with nerves doesn't help us and gets the blood pumping and gets our brain working, and that sort of adrenaline kick can be good, but I'm talking about the nerves where we go into that self-criticism and how much that can actually affect how well we serve our audience. And we can serve our audience better when we connect with our audience, when we consider our audience, and when we think about what their wants and needs are, and they become our priority. Whilst we're worrying and thinking about what they think of us, we're actually being a little bit selfish. And And it's much better for our audience if we let go and just be who we are. So that's my little speech. There are no questions coming up as yet, but as I said, feel free to put any questions in later and I will happily answer them. Just a heads up that my 5-day challenge that I did in April, can't believe it was April, is coming up again in September. And in that 5-day challenge, we will be covering some of this, but in more detail. And each day there will be a small task that will help you refocus what you're doing to not only look at your nerves and reduce your negative nerves, but also help you be more effective in what you're doing, in your performing, and to enjoy it more. So over the course of the 5 days, each day there will be a short task, and then there'll be a Q&A session like this, but actually with a lot more people involved, because it's lovely. There are so many people that get involved. So if that's something you think you might be interested in, I'll put the link in. I haven't put it in yet, but I'll put the link in against this video, and it would be lovely if you joined me then. All right, I'm going to do the final step 3, next week at 1:30 on Wednesday. I look forward to seeing you then. Thank you for listening.